All right, happy Canada Day, guys. There are a lot of stories in the news regarding Canada. As per recently, the economy is not doing very well. The yield curve inversion, the 10-year and the 1 month, has inverted, so that's a huge issue. There's recession on the horizon for Canada, and of course, as this article from The Economist says, Justin Trudeau starts Canada's election campaign as the underdog. Now, this is a symptom of a larger issue that I'm going to get into in a moment. But first, I'm going to get into this story. As it says, voters are doing well, but not feeling good. And as the article goes into, Justin Trudeau received the kind of welcome in Washington, D.C. on June 20th that Canadian Prime Ministers dream of. President Donald Trump, who a year ago called him dishonest and weak, now saluted him as a friend and treated him to lunch at the White House. It's all theater, folks. He promised to help Canada in a diplomatic row with China, provoked in December when Canada arrested a prominent Chinese businesswoman to comply with an American extradition request. Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Speaker of America's House of Representatives, said she was optimistic that Congress would eventually ratify a deal which includes Mexico to replace the North American Free Trade Agreement, a Canadian priority. She gave Mr. Trudeau a basket of Californian wines, nuts, and chocolates. He does like nuts. Those were his winnings from their wager over the duel between the Toronto Raptors and the Golden State Warriors in a basketball championship. An auspicious rainbow appeared over Andrews Air Force Base as Mr. Trudeau's motorcade arrived for the flight home. The omen may have been misleading. On the day of his Washington visit, Canada's MPs dispersed from Ottawa and hit the barbecue circuit to begin the unofficial campaign for the general election due in October. In the opinion polls, Mr. Trudeau's Liberals have been trailing the opposition Conservatives, led by Andrew Scheer, since a controversy erupted in February over what looked like an attempt by the government to interfere with the justice system. And, of course, that regards the SNC Lavalin situation, where basically it looked like, well, his riding, SNC Lavalin, a lot of people who work there would have lost their jobs if, they went through with this whole lawsuit regarding what we saw with them aiding Libya's government and a whole bunch of nefarious activities and, the usual corruption from a corrupt company, and that Justin Trudeau pushed Judy Wilson-Raybould to not go forward with this and to try and save SNC Lavalin as much as she could, which she ended up testifying against. But there's more to this story, guys, because as per usual, we have a situation where the politician, the head, the puppet, the actor, the guy with the nice hair who stands at the podium is not very popular, and people want change. Change. Every single election, we see this very same situation unfold. We saw that with Harper. We all remember, if you're a Canadian driving down the street and you see a stop sign that said "Stop Harper," someone would put a Harper sticker below "Stop." Nothing new there, and before that as well. And it goes with any country in the world. It's all about change. We can believe in real change. That whole mantra that we hear all too often, and it all has to do with the fact that perhaps the change people are looking for isn't another politician to enforce collective rule on everyone, but maybe the real change they're looking for has nothing to do with government, but is outside of the government. Maybe the change they're looking for is you, yourself, themselves. Perhaps it has to do with individuals maybe freeing themselves and freeing their minds and ruling themselves and decentralizing and being responsible, like humanity is naturally, intrinsically supposed to kind of be, attached to this notion of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years of self-determination, and that's how we survived so long. But people have gotten weak and dependent, all by design, really. I mean, the more politics play into it, why wouldn't the government be pushing for more dependence? I mean, that would mean that people would be more dependent to them, and they could get away with more, and they could control people. And, of course, the whole purpose of government in the first place is to control and own the populace and have control over the populace. So it isn't unusual to think that perhaps government is going to continuously try to make people more and more dependent on them. It's kind of how they function. Theft and, all that kind of stuff. We've gone over this before here at World Alternative Media. And, Justin Trudeau has become incredibly unpopular. You go anywhere in the United States, for example, where I am right now, and people will laugh at you if you mention Trudeau's name. Like, oh, that moron that said, that moron that said that we should say people kind rather than mankind, that guy, the guy who's banning straws and stuff and all that kind of fun stuff. It's nobody takes him seriously, but we have to remember that replacing a moron with another moron or a bad guy with another bad guy, out with the old boss, in with the new boss, doesn't change the problem at hand. It's what they do that matters. It's not about who they are, which puppet, which face, which name is on the bill. It's about the actions, the collectivist mantra of the greater good of the greater number that they push forward and get people to agree with, extorting each other, 51% versus the 49%, that whole idea of democracy, which is such incredible nonsense that we're all taught like mantra to repeat and believe in without any question. And we see that in the public school systems, especially with kids spending most of their time in their childhood in a public school classroom rather than with their parents. So then they look to the public school system, their government, their teachers, etc., as mommy and daddy rather than their own parents. They look to the government for guidance. And then when they do something they don't like, they scream and have a fit, but then demand a different parent. It's the perpetuation of a serious problem that is practically never ending. And as long as we continue to perpetuate it, we will get the same results out of it. I do want to also mention that there is a huge problem in Canada with government essentially owning media like a dictatorship, and this notion that, as we see from this article out of Global News, Elections Canada already paid social media influencers before scrapping campaign. And we also remember the massive subsidies that the government gave medias a while back ago. It says here, Elections Canada has already paid the social media influencers it planned to use to encourage voter registrations ahead of the fall election prior to canceling the campaign. A spokesperson for the agency confirmed to Global News that it already gave out at least some of the $650,000 set aside to get the 13 influencers, musicians, athletes, and YouTube stars among them to feature in a promotional campaign aimed at increasing voter registration. Of course, they want more people to vote in a new puppet. And I quote, yes, the influencers were paid, the agency said in response to a question from Global News asking were any of the influencers already paid. And I quote, most of that money has been spent already. We are working to recover some of it. So let's actually think about this for a quick moment here. The Canadian government gave out $600 million, I believe, bailout of medias, which were going under, which are failing mainstream medias, essentially. And then it's worth mentioning at the same time that you have this digital constitution or digital bill of rights or something that Trudeau put out a little while ago with 10 bullet points, which basically say in order to protect free speech, we must tell you which medias to support, which independent medias to ignore, which independent medias to avoid, and how we cannot have hate speech in our country, and that hate speech being subjective to whatever the government decides it is, which could, in very many ways, like we've seen in places like China, involve just not criticizing the government or your social credit score diminishes. It is incredibly crazy and Orwellian, but we are so far past 1984 at this point, and we're into 2084. I can't think of another way to put it. We are beyond whatever we thought we had before regarding free press. We don't have free press anymore. And the government is organized crime, and it's a racket, and it's a complete scam. And we continue to fall for these tricks, and we need to rule ourselves. We need to be responsible. It comes down to you as free individuals. It comes down to you to make your own decisions in life and not tell other people because you have a good idea that it requires force of the organized crime racket we call the state. So we need to break free from this system of enslavement and stop going to the the voter box and going, I'm gonna throw my vote at maybe Andrew Scheer instead for change we can believe in, a new form of change. Or Maxime Bernier, who I've spent time with and I had drinks with, and he's a nice guy and everything. I like him, but I mean, really, it's not going to come from government. The change you're looking for comes from you. It comes from within, and there's no need to constantly perpetuate this voting issue forever. It's gone on since ancient Greece, and every single election since ancient Greece, I believe, under the idea of democracy has been, we need change. Well, that answers your question for you, doesn't it? And again, good ideas don't require force, and taxation is theft, and government is organized crime, and the free market can do everything the government can do much better, and with far less enforcement and far more individual demand. So anyway, I appreciate everyone tuning in today. We will continuously cover the Canadian election because the Canadian election is on our doorstep again, and it's another example of people deciding, you know what, I think my neighbor should be forced to support something I support because I think it's a good idea. It's not. It's never a good idea to force people to do things against their will. Let people decide on their own. Anyway, this is Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here at WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we're so heavily demonetized and censored and shadow banned. It's getting really bad, folks. If everyone just gave $1 single a month to, say, Patreon or our Subscribestar, where we do subscriber-only content, we could really get out of this rut that we are currently in as YouTube tries to stifle independent media and prop up the mainstream media. This is really important. This is one of the most important times in independent media history for us to say it's now or never. Let's keep moving forward and let's be that change that we wish to see in the world. Of course, there's also our Bitcoin address below as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And of course, we got events coming up. So make sure to check us out at anarchovegas.com. Anarchovegas.com. Use promo code WAM, that's WAM, for a 10% discount on your tickets. It's on July 19th, 20th, and 21st in, of course, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's anarchovegas.com. Make sure to check us out there and find us on websites like BitTube and Minds, and just try to support independent media, if not myself, any of the other big independent medias out there, to help us continuously bring our message to you free of charge so that we can really change the guard as we move forward into a dramatically polarized, crazy future. Let's try to make it as sustainable as possible. It comes down to you guys. You are the change you wish to see. You guys will help us get through these tough times. So anyway, check out all those links. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.